Great, thank you for that introduction. Real full house for this talk. Generative AI raises a number of questions and anxieties. Will it replace our jobs? Can we trust what's real? How do we govern it? In some, these are questions around democratic governance, economic distribution, and the authenticity of information, which is essential to both well-functioning markets and also well-functioning politics like democracy. Now, this has spurred the rise of proof-of-personhood protocols, which aims to verify unique humans, paving the way for global democratic processes, UBI, and even AI governance. Now, the ambition of these protocols is simple: represent each unique human with a corresponding unique digital identity, one-to-one. Now, today we want to offer a critique based off of the experience of Idena protocol and their experiment, and a paper we released just a few weeks ago entitled Compressed to Zero. But first, why Idena? Well, Idena was the first proof-of-personhood blockchain with an endogenous network of validators with a one-person, one-vote consensus algorithm. Moreover, they succeeded in actually filtering bots and validating humans. And moreover, they stymied this problem of account trading with unique novel mechanisms. And account trading is where participants validate their accounts and then sell them off in a black market, which is a problem which plagues many proof-of-personhood protocols today, including WorldCoin. So Idena had solved these problems. Now I will pass the mic to my esteemed co-author and founder of Idena protocol, Misha, and he will explain the experiment to you.
Thanks, Puja. So first of all, why Idena was started. Idena aimed to address the challenges of proof-of-stake decentralization. We all know that capital is always heavy-tailed, Pareto distributed, and large staking pools have inevitable economy of scale, which lead to the fact that solo miners are vanishing, giving the way to oligopolies. Also, Idena aimed to solve blockchain scalability trilemma, like a blockchain scalability problem, by establishing a decentralized network of validators with excessive number of operators and facilitating sharding with parallel transactions and asynchronous execution with parallel state machines. Every node was intended to be operated by one unique human with unique account. So various proof-of-person protocols establish uniqueness in different ways. Unlike of WorldCoin and other protocols that relies on biometric data, Idena relies on online simultaneous cognitive tests. It's called so-called validation ceremonies, which happen every few weeks synchronously for all participants. So it's based on the idea that you cannot be in multiple places at the same time, and by solving the flip tests, you actually prove that you are on a bot. And the flip test is a test based on the user-generated story, which makes sense in one configuration and it's meaningless in another one. So for example, you can see the left sequence of images tells a coherent story about a bee sting, whereas the causality on the right side is broken. Oops. So what happened? Idena launched in 2019, accounts steadily increased, but as the network grew, on-chain data began to show some suspicious patterns of transactions sending rewards from validated accounts to the same addresses at the same time. And this kind of coordinated one-way transfers at the same time and to the same wallets implied automation, which requires third-party key access to the participants' accounts. So either these participants were unwittingly ceded their private keys to the third parties, or they just never had them. By December 2020, one of the users contacted us and admitted to run the largest human farm in the network. So in fact, high information operators pay low information participants like puppets to periodically perform validation ceremony and verify their uniqueness in exchange for controlling their accounts and their private keys. So puppets were either unaware about their private keys, or they knew their private keys but were unaware about the significance of the private keys within the protocol. So puppeteering was not a traditional de jure Sybil attack, where malicious actors could fake multiple Sybil accounts, typically using some algorithmic bots, but it was instead, as the protocol filtered bots and authenticated flesh and blood humans, it was de facto like a Sybil attack of humans acting as a programmable bots. So at best, puppeteers extracting some amount delta between UBI paid by the protocol and the wages paid to workers. At worst, they could just take all the rewards of the puppet accounts. But was the picture so black and white? Pool operators also claimed that some awakened puppet were coming back, so they were just offering a service to consensual participants and being remunerated. Earning rewards on Idena is presented with a number of hassles. So you need to run your mining node, you need to exchange Idena coin to the local currency, and all these hassles could be operated by, could be kind of coordinated by the pool operators better than participants on their own. In short, they were cooperating and simply providing the service for some of the participants. So in reality, there are two extreme possibilities and the spectrum in between. Like the same transaction pattern on-chain with this one transfer to the same wallets to the same time could indicate like both puppeteering or voluntary cooperation. And both extremes differ not in how they look like on-chain, but in the distribution of information and control off-chain. So in case of puppeteering, operators have more control and more information, so they know how the protocol works, they control the private keys. But, and by doing that, they capitalize their asymmetry information and control in exchange for minimum wages payments and maximizing like their value and extracting value from the protocol payouts. In contrast, cooperation has great asymmetry of information and control, so participants know how the protocol works, they control their private keys, but find it mutually beneficial to pool resources and delegate control, including their private keys, to operator for greater rewards with economy of scale, but at the same time, keeping pool operators accountable off-chain. So despite of establishing a transparent network with individuals with unique accounts, the protocol collapsed into hidden groups and hidden subnetworks. These groups, whether autocratic or democratic, were competing to control over fixed economic pie. In March 2021, rather than just fighting pools and slashing the suspicious accounts, Idena community voted for the fork and agreed to bring these pools out of the unquantified shadows. The on-chain delegation was introduced. This delegation gave pools economic incentives, so pooled account could earn mining rewards using only one node instead of multiple nodes for every account in the pool. But what's more important, with delegation, pool operators could handle operational hassles and earn accounts rewards without needing to know the participants' private keys. So the delegation succeeded in making pools transparent. The green area shows the network pre-delegation, when accounts could not be differentiated, when accounts, even if accounts were controlled by the same pool operator. And after delegation, the protocol could measure the size of the pools. So as the network grew, the growth was notably among large pools, which are red and pink, while solo accounts, which are blue, outlined, constituting a smaller and smaller proportion of the network up until the peak of the puppeteering crisis in May 2022. The percentage of the solo accounts in blue shrunk from 62% to 27% of the network. Large pools had a reverse trend, ballooning from 22% to 61% of the network accounts. Large pools also captured a larger share of rewards from the fixed economic pie, dumping the Idena coin price and squeezing rewards from solo accounts. So the number of pools increased, and as they run a single node, the nodes as a percentage of the network in turn significantly dropped, leading to loss of throughput and security. So the purpose of delegation was to make coordinated pools visible and enable pool operators to handle operational hassles without knowing the private keys of the participants' accounts. But oddly, large pools continued to show the signs of third-party key access with automated simultaneous or sequential transactions like delegations, account terminations, and funneling rewards earned before delegation or after termination of accounts. And looking at these factors, we examined top 31 pools that had ever been delegated to more than 100 accounts in the Idena protocol history. And all these top 31 pools showed the signs of third-party key access. Moreover, some pools had financial ties, and as we treat them as the same entity, then these 31 pools were in fact only 23 entities. So the puppeteering crisis reached its peak in May 2022. There were only 23 entities representing less than 1% of the distinct entities, controlling at least 40% of the accounts and almost half of the protocol rewards. This prompted us to change the model to sublinear identity staking, which is the combination of proof of stake and proof of personhood, but this is the subject for the further research. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so Misha's damning statistic on less than 1% of the entities controlling the keys of almost 40% of the network's accounts, to many in this room, to most here, this is sufficient condition for, or sufficient evidence, prima facie evidence for puppeteering, not your keys, not your coins, kind of encapsulates his perspective. But if we were to be charitable and take the operator's perspective, the pool operator's perspective, third-party key control could be, a voluntary choice by high information participants, presuming they could hold operators accountable off-chain. However, addressing this perspective and looking at the evidence, we observed a lack of disputes and complaints, as well as a lack of marketing of pool operators that would evidence accountable custody relationships. Also, notably, the jurisdictions of the large pools lacked a rule of law: Indonesia, Russia, and Egypt. And then there were, of course, other factors. There were these messages from the largest pool operators. There was a meteoric rise and fall of accounts. So based off of this totality of facts, we concluded that the model of one person, one vote, one reward had simply collapsed into many puppeteered sub-networks. And yet our analysis was still very cursory. It excluded other large pools between 15 and 100 accounts. It also excluded family pools with less than 15 accounts. So the statistics could only get worse, not better. So I want to kind of take a step back and talk about the major takeaways of this experiment. And again, this is the first empirical study of a proof-of-personhood protocol, and proof-of-personhood is increasingly being touted as a solution to all these problems around governance and economic distribution. The first takeaway is that by giving humans economic incentives to periodically differentiate themselves from bots, even as low as $2 to $14 every few weeks, the Idena protocol had actually given more informed, resourceful humans financial incentives to puppeteer less informed humans like bots. And when participants traded their time for a paycheck from more resourceful humans, they ultimately transformed a system that was intended to be one person, one vote, into one token, one vote, where plutocrats and puppeteers gained outsized influence. Now, these economies of scale for the more resourceful to exploit is not something unique to Idena, but common to all protocols, all distributed protocols. As we mentioned at the start of this talk, other protocols validate humans in different ways, for example, biometric scans. But just because humans don't necessarily have to run their own node or do periodic cognitive tests, that doesn't mean that they don't have hassles. That means they just have a different set of hassles, which intermediaries and operators will be happy to step in and readily perform. Which takes us to takeaway 4. These exploits might not always manifest as puppeteering, but can also manifest as account trading. Now, as I mentioned at the start of the talk, Idena stymied account trading through novel mechanisms, notably identity staking. But other protocols, such as WorldCoin, this past summer has had documented cases of account trading. We don't know the extent to which. So account trading in protocols should not be treated as evidence of advanced mechanisms or protections, but to the contrary, account trading may signal a lack of them and be a precursor to puppeteering. Which takes us to takeaway 4. The challenge of filtering humans from bots controlling accounts can't be separated from the information challenge. Proof of personhood seeks to differentiate humans from bots, not their biases. But as Idena demonstrated, when given incentives to differentiate themselves from bots, humans also have incentives to align, control, and puppeteer other humans like bots to amplify their biases. And it's biases, or the problem of faction, that we care about when we're creating systems of, democratic governance. This information challenge will only get worse and more acute as humans integrate biologically with neural interfaces. The distinction between filtering humans from bots and humans acting like programmable bots will blur more, if not collapse, revealing a more foundational challenge than establishing biological uniqueness, establishing the informational uniqueness of participants or the extent to which they cluster with the same interests or biases. Now, this is not a technical problem, but a social one. De facto Sybils, or puppets, or humans acting like bots, are the natural objects of colluders or puppeteers. By extension, de facto Sybil resistance is a mutually implicated or mirror challenge to collusion resistance. Neither can be solved independently, but both must be tackled simultaneously. And finally, the last takeaway here is that thwarting on-chain vote buying with novel mechanisms like receipt freeness or advancements in like proofs of complete knowledge, these don't actually solve for off-chain vote buying into meat space, but actually may encourage it as a low-cost alternative. Recall, Idena actually undermined account trading with identity staking, so the next best alternative for vote buying became off-chain puppeteering or buying participants' time. Similarly, when on-chain vote buying and trusted execution environments become costly, we can simply expect the more resourceful to move off-chain. So the Idena experiment underscores the importance of thinking in terms of incentives, systems, interacting systems, and most importantly, acknowledging the ties that arise from both talking and trading. In future work, we examine the relationship between incenting unique accounts and stake in a paper entitled Between 0 and 1, and after that, we explore social identity as a richer identity system in Beyond 0 1. Thank you. Do you have time for questions?
Yes, so congratulations for such an inspiring and good presentation. We thank you very much. And now we have some time for two questions. Does anyone have a question? Okay, thank you. I will take the microphone to you.
Hi. Okay. So first of all, it's very impressive that you had the data to do an empirical study of how these protocols work. And I wanted to ask you, what was the most surprising result that, I can understand it's not easy to model and predict human behavior, but maybe you had already an idea of how it was going to work. So what was the most surprising result from the empirical data on social coordination? And then a question for me is, would you do anything different if you could go back on the protocol, knowing then what happened? Yeah.
I think the most surprising result was, 2 years ago, I co-authored this paper called Decentralized Society, and we offered a critique of proof of personhood in about 2 paragraphs, which basically made these points. And then folks kind of didn't take it seriously, and I was like, all right, well, let's actually do the empirical work and like substantiate the claims. And I was really surprised, actually, the extent to which there was puppeteering. So we only studied like the top 31 pools, right? And there was like over 400 pools, but those 31 pools constituted, about 40% of the counts, right? And that was puppeteered. And that didn't even look at, the rest of the pools. But when you looked at kind of, in the paper we show the distribution of stake and rewards in these other pools, and they show the same pattern. So we didn't go ahead and do the chain analysis, but there's pretty much a strong indication that probably most of the network was puppeteered, though we can't claim that. So I think the breadth and depth is what was surprising to me.
Yeah, there was another question, right? Yeah, if I would start it like the protocol again, maybe I would start it with a sublinear identity staking as a starting point, because we don't have like much primitives in the Web3 space. We have only token voting, and we introduced like a proof of personhood. But anyways, you should start and then see how it goes, right? Like it's a matter of like experimentation and like empirical study, and let's see how it goes. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so first of all, thanks for the presentation. And I'm wondering, how does the competitive landscape look for you? And like, what are some of the alternatives? Because, I mean, maybe I can't discern the difference between like proof of personhood or proof of humanity and other things. So maybe you can summarize on that as well.
I mean, I think so. Proof of humanity, any kind of like protocol that seeks to have one person, one account, and achieve this traditional Sybil resistance, de jure Sybil resistance, is vulnerable to this critique. I think the set of tools and set of like representations need to be expanded, and particularly representing groups and relying on a web of trust as a complement to simply verifying unique humans. If you over-index and solve and create incentives to solve one aspect, like verifying biological uniqueness, then it invites this information problem, where people have an incentive to control humans by controlling their information. So the best kind of remedy, and we talk about this in the paper, is actually to expand the identity space beyond simple biological representations to representing memberships of groups. So if there's an analogy, there's representing individuals, right? If you think about social coordination, there's individuals, there's communities and civil society, and then there's nation states. And proof of personhood is kind of trying to just solve this representing individuals, sovereign individuals, and then like a lot of KYC nation state stuff tries to offer centralized authentication. And the thing that has been largely ignored is this middle level of civil society and groups, which actually is the best protection against authoritarian or top-down control, and also the anarchy of just having a bunch of sovereign individuals that aren't operating within social structures. So actually using social structures as a way to complement identity, I think, is the way to move forward.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, agree. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Puja and Mikhail. Thank you.